one of the things about product roadmaps is that they are pretty much the linchpin for any sort of strategic UX work. And in particular, they are absolutely key when we're talking about uh, making sure that your UX practice and your agile practice are integrated and working together. One way that we can think about the agile practice is it very much breaks everything down into little pieces, and it's focused on those little pieces all the time. But one of the things to think about is that the roadmap is a key bit of planning that goes into it. There's a myth that in agile you're not supposed to plan anything. That's not true. You're actually supposed to have a very thorough and thought out plan, but you often don't focus on the plan. What you focus on in Agile are what you're doing every day. So for instance, if you're using Scrum, we can think of Scrum as something that is happening on a daily basis. So this is, each one of these little circles that I just drew here represents your daily Scrum. And those circles exist within the concept of a sprint. And a sprint, or if you're using Scrum or if you're using some other form of Agile, it might be you might call it something slightly different. But the idea is that a sprint takes 2 to 3 weeks, whereas a Scrum is 1 day. And so that's usually where we focus. That's where our time and attention is playing on. But we can focus there because we've spent the time and we've done good work to understand where we're going. And so we can just take our time and dedicate it to this work. But if we really want to get Agile and UX to work effectively together, we have to think about the bigger layers. And so a bigger layer here is an epic, which many teams use, which is basically typically 2 to 3 sprints, which means that you're probably looking at 6 to 8 weeks for an epic. And epics you have multiple epics in a release. So a lot of teams, come on, I can spell, RELEASE. A release is typically, a quarter for a lot of teams. So the time frame is bigger. So, in a quarter you can have 2 epics often, and the requisite number of sprints that go with that. The release, of course, happens within the bigger picture of the roadmap. And the roadmap, it often goes out about 18 months. So, in 18 months, you would have 6 quarters and so on. And so the roadmap is this sort of bigger picture of planning that is absolutely key to understanding what goes in a release, because it's going to be the highest priority things in the roadmap. What goes into epic, those are the things we need to do to get the release out. What goes into a sprint, those are the things we need to do to complete the epic. And the daily Scrum, which is what we're working on today. So we're focused always on all of these simultaneously, but from an Agile UX perspective, we need to look at what this bigger picture is and understand how this all works together. And this is where we as UX leaders can really add benefit, because when we're in the midst of the Scrum here, we're making a ton of decisions. And at the sprint level, at the epic level, at the release level, even at the roadmap level, we are making a whole bunch of decisions. But those decisions require that we have solid confidence, right? You can think of confidence as a range between a complete guess and a absolute surety that we know what we're supposed to be doing. We're most confident when we're absolutely sure. We're least confident when we're guessing. That, at least theoretically, we should be. So what we can do as UX leaders is we can increase confidence to make sure that we're really sure that what we're working on at each of these levels is the most important thing that we can be working on, and that any decisions that we're making are in fact the right decisions to make. Because if we make the wrong decisions, we're going to find out later on, and then we're going to have to come back and redo things. So that becomes problematic. And we can also make sure that for every item on the roadmap, we are adding UX outcomes to each each of them, so that we know exactly what we're trying to improve. And we can influence the roadmap by making sure that for every item on the roadmap, we have a deep understanding of what the user's current experiences are, trying to do the things that that roadmap item is supposed to enhance their life with. And by having that as a baseline, we can tell what type of improvements we're going to make in people's lives. And we can also influence the roadmap by having a well understood list of problems to solve for each item. And we can also make sure that we have a way to prioritize the roadmap, and we can help make it easier to prioritize so that the things we're working on are the highest value things for the least amount of effort that we have the most confidence with. And then finally, having all of this UX capability, when we are working with strategic UX, we are now at this point where we can identify really innovative opportunities for potential roadmap items going forward. So this is what we're talking about today. I'm going to walk through how we get to each of these items on the list, because it's each of these things that are absolutely key. So let's start by just talking about how this all fits into an agile practice. And the way to think about this is that we are focused on our sort of sprint, right? In agile, the basic unit is the sprint. And there's a sprint start, at least they're supposed to start with a ritual where you figure out what you're going to do, right? During the sprint, what you're going to accomplish. You come up with what it means to be done with the sprint. And then you have this time box period. Usually it's 2 to 3 weeks. And then there's a point at the end where you deliver what it is that you've done. Ideally, it's supposed to be some notion of working software that does the things that you were trying to get into your definition of done. And you also spend a little time reflecting on whether you were able to get all the things done and everything went as clearly as planned. And this is the basic construct of a sprint. In between these two periods, you spend time doing the things you're trying to get done and trying to make sure that you have some working software to deliver. And the goal is to do these over and over and over again in order to get better at estimating what you can get done and to actually make sure you deliver something that is working enough that it's useful for people and moving forward in that way. But when we talk about UX, and as we've talked about it last week, Agile and UX were never made to work together. There was no understanding of UX when Agile was put together. So we're always sort of fighting this fact that UX is basically, in many instances, sort of band-aided onto the side, or duct taped, I think is a better term, to the side of any agile process. But usually what happens is there's some identification of a decision that has to get made, and the UX people are like, oh, we can help you make that decision. Let's go do some research. So we go off and we try to do some research so that we can help make the decision. So we have this phase of UX research in here. But what often happens is that the people making the decision get really impatient, so they either push to shorten the research, or they just decide that they're not going to deal with the research. They're going to ignore it. They're going to come up with the answer for their decision, which is probably a complete guess, and therefore the confidence is really low. And this is the nature of reactive UX. It's trying to shove our UX processes into a sprint, which is only 2 to 3 weeks long. And as everybody knows, UX doesn't want to be constrained to a 2 to 3 week time box. It fights this. So in order for us to do much better, we have to become proactive. We actually have to be able to give the answer to the decision, have that work done in advance. We have to focus on predicting what this is. And this is one of the reasons that the roadmap is really important, because the roadmap gives us clues as to what we're going to work on in every sprint. If we can look in the roadmap and we can see what this is top priority in the roadmap, we can then say, okay, what research will we need to do before the sprint starts, so that we can get ready to be able to answer all the decisions that are going to come up. We want to come into the sprint as well informed as possible, right? And we have to have as much time to do it, because we can't do this. People try to do this in some sort of sprint zero or some sort of dual track agile. Those have proven not to really work well. What we really need to do is we need to give ourselves a much bigger amount of time. And the way we do that is we read the roadmap. The roadmap tells us what we're going to be doing next. And it's the roadmap that gives us these hints that lets us do this. Now, the easiest way to think of a roadmap is that it's basically just a type of schedule. It may or may not have dates associated with it, and that's not important, but it does have some basic structure. All roadmaps should have this basic structure. And the basic structure is this. It's telling you what you're working on now. It's telling you what you're going to work on next. And it's telling you what you're going to work on later. And by later, we mean subsequent releases, right? So remember, the roadmap helps us understand what's in each release. The release helps us understand what's in the epic, which is basically just a sort of broken up release. The epic tells us what we're going to work on in each sprint. So in order to understand what we're going to do in the sprint, we have to know what we're going to do in the epic. We're going to have to know what we do in the release, and that information is encoded in the roadmap. So the roadmap allows us to think this way, and we can put this into a numeric form. So now we can think of as the current release, so that's the +0 release. Next is the +1 release, and then all the rest of them, plus the release after that, the release after that, the release after that, the release after that, all of these things are what are in the later releases. So the roadmap can be broken up into these pieces. Now, conventionally, what we see teams do is they fill these things with the features they want to build, right? Often this is done by a product team, though not always. But it's usually the product team that takes responsibility for the roadmap. And what they do is they say, okay, right now we're working on this feature and we're working on this other feature, and I've got a team on this feature and I've got a team on that feature. And this is completely constrained by how many resources you have to work on things simultaneously. So if you're a small organization, you're only going to have a few. If you're a large organization, you're going to have a ton. Large organizations sometimes put a layer on top of this, which is what you get when you do something like the scaled agile framework, which is a sort of fake version of agile that's intended to do things really large. It's basically waterfall encoded as agile. And what they do is they create release trains, and release trains are basically mini roadmaps divided up by some grouping that dictate what a particular subset of the teams are going to work on now, and then what they're going to work on next, and then what they're going to work on after that. That's the idea behind release trains, but it's the same concept. It's just a schedule, right? And so then there's stuff you're not working on. So there's probably some stuff which have been identified as the things that people would really like to work on next. So those features get plunked into the next row, and then everything else gets scattered about in the later period as they come in. So as people have ideas of what to build, or there's a customer who comes in and says, I've got a big bag of money. If you'll give me data export, I will pay you that big bag of money. And so that's key. And then somebody goes to a conference and finds out that chat, learning models is important. So we shove that onto the roadmap. Or blockchain. Everybody has to have blockchain on their roadmap. It's a rule. So all of these things eventually just get put on the roadmap. And where they get put into these things has to do with what people think the priority of them are. And so if the big bag of money is key and somebody really wants data export, we might move it up here to be the next thing we work on because we really, really, really want that big bag of money. And the thing is that roadmaps tend to be a political thing, right? They're fairly political, and the reason that they're political is that any set of priorities is political, right? Anytime you try to say this is more important than that, people are going to have different opinions. It's going to work for some people for their priorities, for the things they are most interested in. It's going to work against other people for their priorities. So everything becomes political at that level. And so we can't be afraid of politics in the roadmap. The design is political, UX is political. We have to be political, and what we really want to talk about is how we get beyond that. And the way we get beyond that is the fact that these roadmaps are populated with features, and the features, unfortunately, are just a solution, right? They're just something that we're going to ship. So we can think of a feature. Another way to think about that is to think of it as a solution that we're providing a customer and or a user. And when we have feature-driven roadmaps, we get ourselves into a little bit of trouble, because with a feature-driven roadmap, we are focused just on delivery. Because that's the only thing we can really do, is deliver a feature. The definition of done is the customer has the feature and can now use it. But when we talk about strategic UX, lost my blue pen, here it is. When we talk about strategic UX, what we really want to do is focus on, there we go. Focus on the UX outcome. right? The UX outcome answers a question. And the question is, if we do a really great job on this feature, how do we improve someone's life? So we change the conversation from just which thing is most important to deliver right now to which improvement is most valuable to the customer or to our users. The more we can improve people's lives, the more they're going to be excited to pay for this. And so this idea of switching up the conversation from the solution to the outcome is really critically important. Because what we can do is we can go through the roadmap and we can say, okay, let's start with what's in the next release. I always recommend that we start with what's in the next release because the current work that we're doing, that ship has sailed. We're just doing it. We're not going to stop doing it. So we're going to focus on the next release here. So when we say, okay, what we working on in the next week, we can say, okay, if we do a good job on this feature, what is the outcome? And if we do a good job on this feature, what is the outcome? And if we do a good job on data export, what is the outcome? And we can go through the entire list and we can identify what the outcomes are for everything in the next band and then everything in the later band that comes after that and everything that comes after that. And just by having this defined as outcomes, we're now focusing on the improvements that people get in their lives. And when we can focus on the improvements people get, we have a different conversation about, well, is data export really the improvement we want to focus on next? Or is there something later on, a better outcome that we want to move up? And no one is going to ask this question about if we do a great job on this feature or capability, will it improve someone's life? No one else is going to ask that but us. Because everybody else is focused on delivery. Everybody else is focused on getting something delivered as quickly as possible. And so we need to focus on the outcome. We need to focus on that and get people talking about that. And if we do that, we're already making the roadmap better. We are getting people to talk in terms of users. If we can get the entire roadmap converted from features to outcomes and have people talking in terms of the outcomes we're delivering, not the features, we are making the roadmap more human-centered. And this is really strong. And these outcomes, they become the ultimate definition of done. We are not done shipping this thing until we have seen the outcome happen. And this allows us to prioritize the backlog, that sort of debt that accumulates in the backlog. Suddenly, we're prioritizing this as key. So all of a sudden, we see that happening. And where we can add real value is by going out and making sure that there's a vision that drives the roadmap. A vision that might be, 5 to 8 years out, that basically says, if we do a great job over the next 5 to 8 years, how does that improve users' lives? How do we make someone amazingly better? We need to make sure that the first 18 months of our roadmap are moving us closer to the vision. So now we're having real influence on the roadmap by constructing a vision of what we're going to do. And the way we get there is we study people's experiences. And if you've been hanging around with me, you know that I like to represent experiences as a timeline. And the way this timeline works is we go off and we start to look at someone's life, right? If we're going to improve their life, we need to know what their life is like today. So we go find a place where our product or service fits in their life, and we study what happens before the product or service fits in their life, while the product or service is in their life, after the product or service does what it's supposed to do in their life, whatever that is. And now what we're doing is we're studying what that experience is like. And we can go visit a person. My favorite person to go visit is Edna. Edna's not a persona. Edna's a real person. I have to keep reminding people of this. And we're going to measure Edna's life in terms of extreme frustration to extreme delight. And what we see is that, when Edna's doing whatever it is Edna's doing, it starts off for her as delightful, but then she gets frustrated. Then it gets delightful again. Then she gets really frustrated because she can't figure out how to get the product to do what she wants. But then she figures it out eventually, and this sort of roller coaster ride that Edna has. This roller coaster life is in fact the experience. We call this the current experience. Now, this is just one person's experience. So we have to be careful because we're producing something usually that more than one person's going to use. So we need to go find out not just what Edna's experience is like, but we have to find Taylor's experience and Everett's experience and Ryan's experience. And we need to see what all those people's experiences are like. And when we do that, we now can see that there are patterns. And it's not just Edna who gets frustrated here. Tyler and Everett get frustrated here. And Ryan and Everett get frustrated here. So suddenly we can see that there's a whole bunch of frustration that's common. So if we can come up with a way to make Edna's life better, we can improve Edna's life. That's our outcome. Right? Then suddenly we're making it better not just for Edna, but we're making it better for Everett and Ryan and everybody else who has this issue. And so that's why the current experience is key. So in order for us to know how to update our roadmap, we want to make sure that as things get promoted up into the now category, we not only have the outcome, but we also have a notion of what the current experience is. Because we're going to measure the success of this ship, of this release, based on have we improved someone's life? And in order to know the improvement, we have to know where they are today. We have to know what that current experience is. So we have to know the outcome, and we have to know the current experience. But there's one more thing that we really want to know, which is going to make our life so much easier, and that is we want to know what problems we're trying to solve in the first place. After all, a solution needs a problem. If we don't know what the problem is, we're just guessing as to what we're trying to solve. And so the way we figure out what the problem is we ask the question, why can't Edna get this improvement without our help? Why can't she get this on her own? And when we start to list out all the reasons as to why Edna just can't get the improvement in her life on her own, these are the problems that we have to solve. So, the current experience informs the problems to solve. The problems to solve then help us figure out what solution we should absolutely build. When we know what solution to build, we can then build it, and then see if we get the improvement in the life of Edna and Taylor and Ryan and Everett. And if we can get the improvement in this life, right, then we now know that we've succeeded. We can move on to the next thing on the roadmap. But if we haven't gotten the improvement, well, this informs our ability to build up expertise on what we're trying to do and why it's hard. And this gives us a competitive advantage. So the roadmap then becomes something where we want to identify the problems to solve for at least everything in the next band. If we can identify what the problems to solve are in the next band, then we now have an advantage to be able to move much faster than we were before. The outcome, the current experience, the problems to solve, this is what we're able to bring as a UX leader. This is the stuff that really drives our capabilities as a UX leader. And this is absolutely key. By the way, if roadmaps are new to you, there's a fantastic book on the subject of roadmaps that I absolutely love that was written by Bruce McCarthy and C. Todd Lombardo, who is here today. I keep seeing him in the chat. Evan Ryan and Michael Connors. They wrote this book called Product Roadmaps Relaunched. And I believe this is required reading for anybody who wants to be a UX leader. So you need to buy a copy. Probably you should buy 2 or 3. They make great gifts. You should give them off to all your product managers. And I'm not just saying that because C. Todd is hanging out here. I would say it even behind C. Todd's back. He just happened to write an absolutely fantastic book. Anyways, I would go off and buy Product Roadmaps Relaunched. I put in the notes a link to it on Amazon. Though, if you want to be kind to local bookshops, I recommend bookshop.org. Okay. So this is key. Outcomes, current experience, problems to solve. If we, I'm pointing at things, you can't see them. Outcomes, current experience, problems to solve, right? This is really the strategic UX framework, and this is absolutely key. And what this is going to do is this is going to dramatically speed up our agile sprints. And what's going to happen when we do this is we're going to come up to something that is far more informed, which is going to allow us to answer questions much earlier. So we have to focus on building out the roadmap by doing much more proactive research. And by doing that, we actually influence what's on the roadmap and how we talk about the roadmap. And when we have an understanding of the current experience, we have an understanding of the problems to solve, we come in to a solid understanding before the sprint starts, which makes us be able to get to decisions faster, which means we're going to be able to get more done during the sprint, and we're going to make sure that every sprint gets us closer to improving people's lives. And the last piece that I just want to go over quickly, and we did a whole session on this, on how you establish priorities, but is that there's I was taught a formula by Bruce McCarthy. He's one of the authors with C. Todd on the Product Roadmaps Relaunch book. And he taught me this formula, which is priority equals value divided by effort times confidence. And this is where we really shine as UX leaders, because as UX leaders, value refers to the value to the business, right? It's to the user and to the business. So this is how we make sure that we are delivering something that is going to make the business successful. And we're going to do that because it's going to make users much more excited about paying for the product. Or, you know, if users and choosers are not the same people because you've got some sort of enterprise app or something that it's just a different group, that value has to be values to the choosers and values to the users because they require both. And then effort gets better because by understanding what the problems to solve are, we know what the effort is better. And all of this increases confidence. Remember, confidence is 0% to 100%, where 0% is a complete guess, 100% is we're absolutely sure. And because we're doing all of these things, we are getting much, much better. So all of this is key. And then finally, this helps us develop better metrics because UX outcomes make for great success metrics. And we'll talk about that in a future session. I've talked about it in past sessions, but we can focus on all of that there. So all of this means that we are bringing much better work by reframing the roadmap to include UX outcomes, problems to solve, talking about confidence. All of this stuff gives us solid influence on what the roadmap is and how we use it in the organization. And it doesn't just become this shopping list of features that people have asked for and we're just going to check them off in random order. It now becomes something that delivers real value to the organization. And this is absolutely essential in any organization where you want to start becoming more strategic, but it's critically essential in organizations where you are trying to make Agile and UX work together. Because as I said at the beginning, Agile and UX are not made to work together. And we have spent the last 20 years trying to adapt UX to work with Agile. That no longer works. We have to abandon that strategy and now focus on a strategy where we are taking things like the roadmap and becoming much more proactive, much more strategic, focusing most of our UX efforts on understanding that roadmap. And that actually has the downstream effect of making every sprint go much smoother, much faster.
Jared here. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing so you'll get more videos like this. If you have any comments, questions, or thoughts, feel free to drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And hey, consider joining our Leaders of Awesomeness community. It's completely free, home to over 50,000 UX leaders who regularly share questions, ideas, inspiration about their experiences. The link is in the description below. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next video.